Okay, so this thing is ugly enough as it is. So I'm wanting to do step number 6, which means I want to solve by using the square roots method. I really want to get this side right here in a little bit prettier shape. So because these are two numbers that need to be combined, I want to combine them. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do what I can. And what I can do is I can square that. So I'm going to leave this alone, and I'm going to say, make this become b squared, because that's what b times b is. And on the bottom, 2 squared is 4, and on the bottom right there is a squared. So I've simplified this. Why? Because I can. And now that I've simplified that, I might be able to add these together. But these two things right here are fractions, right? And since these are fractions, what is true about being able to add fractions? You have to have a common denominator. So these denominators are obviously not the same, but I can make them the same if I take this fraction right here and I multiply it times the value of 1, because what happens when you multiply something times 1? Nothing. It doesn't change its value. So I'm going to multiply this by a 1, disguised, however, my 1 is going to be disguised so that when I get through with this multiplication, I end up with a fraction that on the bottom right here that has a denominator that's exactly like this denominator that I had up here. Okay, so all I did was bring this down. I didn't do anything to this. And this one, I'm taking this and I'm multiplying it times 1. Why am I multiplying that times 1? Because now if I multiply this, I get I'm not sure what order I'm going to write this in. So I'm just going to write, this is, I probably, I'm going to rewrite this. Hold on. Because when we write things that are multiplied together, we put them in, we put the number first, and then we put the letters second, and the letters go in alphabetical order. So negative C times 4 times A, this is the same thing. I've just reordered the order in which I wrote them down. Multiplication, it doesn't matter. You get the same answer regardless of what order you multiply them in. And on the bottom right here, I get a times 4 times a. Well, that's 4a squared. Now, why did we do that? Because now we have 4a squared on the bottom right here. And now we can write, we can add the numerators. We can add the numerators, and we write, we keep the denominator the same. So we've got this negative sign right here, and this negative sign hanging out in front is not something that we usually like to do. So I'm just going to put the b squared up in front and do minus 4ac. Okay, so all I did was rearrange the order in which I add things, and you can do that. I put the b squared first because it was positive, and then I said I'm going to take away from that the negative 4ac. So what I did was I got a common denominator. I first of all, I squared that. I got a common denominator. So we simplify right here. We simplify from here to here. Okay. Then I got a common denominator. Multiply by 1. Multiply by 1. Disguised as 4a over 4a. Why did I do that? So I can get a common denominator, and then I just added my fractions. Okay, so that was all I did, and all of that, this over here stayed the same all the way down. So you'll want to come up and write this all the way down. Why? Because these are the things that you're going to look for when you're matching. Okay, now This was just to get ready to do step number 6. Now that we've got our problem ready, we can do step 6. We can do step 6 right here. And step 6 says to solve by the square root method. And how do we do the square root method? We take the square root of both sides. So we got the square root of x plus b over 2a squared. And then this is b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared. Okay, so the whole purpose of doing that is just like when we're working with numbers, those two things cancel out. And so you get x plus b over 2a. And this one right here, we're going to, remember, anytime we take the square root of both sides, we have to put a plus or minus. So don't forget about that. So I put a plus or minus right there. And the next thing I'm going to do here, because I can, is I want to separate this into a square root on top. Uh-oh, I lost my C somewhere. And a square root on bottom. Now, if you are paying close attention, you'll understand why I wanted to do that, because if I take this that's on bottom, I'm not supposed to have square roots that are on bottom. Well, I'm not going to have a square root on bottom, because if you take the square root of 4, you get 2. If you take the square root of a squared, you get a, right? Because those two things cancel out. So when I take the square root of 4a squared, I get, okay, this, I get 2a on the bottom. All right. Now, back to solve by taking the square root. I got to get x by itself, okay? So I'm going to subtract b over 2a, and I'm going to subtract b over 2a right here. And this is not something that I can actually combine together. However, do you notice that they do have the same, so right there they add out. So this is going to slide up right in front, negative b over 2a plus or minus, and then we've got the square root. And what do you notice about these denominators? They're the same. So we're going to combine the numerators because we can. That's what you do when the fractions have the same denominator. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the quadratic formula.